Towards the end of my time at GDC, I had the pleasure of playing some of 505 Games' upcoming titles, and one of them was Blades of Fire. I knew of developer Mercury's team, the devs behind Metroid Dread and Castlevania Lords of Shadow, so I was pretty excited to see what they were going to do next. And after playing it, I was blown away. I fell in love with the combat and forging mechanics, and now that the game is here, and apart from some rough edges, Blades of Fire is an excellent Metroidvania with an addictive combat loop. However, in this video, I'm going to be going over how Blades of Fire runs on the Steam Deck and the recommended way to play it. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. The game is also recorded on the Steam Deck directly, so your experience may be slightly better than what you're going to see in this video. A copy of the game was also provided to us by 505 Games for review. Thank you. You can check out our written review for the game up on our website as well. Before getting into it, Blades of Fire is not on Steam. It's only going to be released on the Epic Games Store at this time, so I had a feeling that the experience wasn't going to be the best. However, it was better than I expected, and I would actually consider it playable. With it launching only on the Epic Games Store, we're going to need some way to run it without Steam. In this case, you could use the Heroic Launcher or download the Epic Launcher directly to play it. I did try it on Heroic first, but I received errors when trying to boot it up. However, I ended up installing the launcher directly using the non-Steam launcher script, and I was able to boot up the game just fine. So, unless something changes on launch, that's the way I recommend using it. This is the way I recommend downloading and playing it. As for the actual performance, it runs quite well in most scenarios. I found many areas at the balanced or medium quality preset to run around 45 frames per second with XeSS upscaling on at 80%. However, there are some bigger areas with more enemies that drop the frame rate, and running around through levels can lead to even bigger drops. There are some adjustments we have to make, but with them we can get near 30 frames per second in almost every scenario with solid visual quality. With almost every setting at performance mode and XeSS at 65%, we can get 30 frames per second throughout almost the entirety of the game, with some very minor drops when running around that can't really be felt. The game still looks fantastic in these settings with sharp visuals even at the lowest quality setting. There are some hitches every now and then, but they're unavoidable and most likely come from not being on Steam and not having a shared shader cache that Steam games benefit from. I did compare FSR and XeSS upscaling as well, since it has both, but I found that FSR has worse ghosting problems that can come from swinging weapons, and XeSS just looks a little bit better overall. They tend to perform around the same amount, so there isn't much difference other than how it looks. We'll also be ranging the battery drain from around 18 watts to 23 watts and gives us around 2.5 to 3 hours on the OLED Steam Deck and 1.5 to 2 hours on the LCD. I also recommend disabling the frame rate limit in SteamOS and using the in-game frame rate cap at 30 frames per second. This heavily reduces any input lag that can come from VSync, which is going to be very important for this type of game. Reaction time will make or break some of these boss fights, so maximizing the fastest response time is really important. This is also one of the very few games I've played where frame generation doesn't feel awful. While there is some very slight input lag and stuttering and slowdowns here and there, the game does feel smoother for the most part. However, the slowdowns happen more often than I would like. It isn't frequent, and I would still consider it playable, but I don't recommend it personally since I prefer a smoother, stable experience. But when all said and done, I would consider it bearable with frame generation. I couldn't get good game capture to accurately show how it feels and performs, so I took these screenshots to show that the game with frame generation on. Overall, Blades of Fire is a fantastic game. The combat and crafting loop is addicting, and it's pretty surreal being able to play it on the Steam Deck. It runs much better than I expected, especially for a game that isn't on Steam, and I can happily recommend playing it on the go. Blades of Fire can be purchased on the Epic Games Store for $59.99, but if you pre-order it before it releases on May 22nd, you can get it for $53.99. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.